into the new era is to try to cover lots of different things that will take us forward and broaden the remit. And you will notice our beautiful new banners this year, by the way. We've got the sun over there and the moon over there. So, of course, it's full of symbolism and archetype. But the next speaker, Laura Williams, she's an artist, she's a designer, but she also has an affinity with the moon and what the moon means and the moon's effect on our life. The tides, for instance, are a crucial sign that this huge orb that spins around our world has a very big effect. But a way of marking that in a kind of monument to bring it to life for everybody and the meaning of all this, well, this is something that Laura has been working on for many years with a project called the Lunar Project. And Aluna is something that's very exciting, and you're going to hear now about what really this is all about. So I hope you're going to give a big hand to Laura Williams.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm Laura. I've come to tell you about a project called Aluna. I've been working on it for about 11 years. We've been spending all that time looking for the right site, and during this presentation I'll show you how Aluna works, the site that we finally found that we think is pretty unparalleled. And basically, this is for a monumental new timepiece for London. It's inspired by our capital, by the cultures, by its status as home of time, and also by our tidal nation and our Celtic and pagan past. So before I show you how Aluna works and where we intend to build it, I'd like to show you a very short film about the project that we made a few years ago.
Aluna is a unique proposal for the world's first tidal-powered moon clock. A monumental timepiece for the planet, a beacon for a sustainable future. Aluna will change the way we understand time and allows us to rediscover the science between the moon, the tides, and a planet dominated by water. Larger than Stonehenge, Aluna's 40-meter wide, 13-meter high structure is made up of 3 concentric glass rings that represent the lunar phase, the lunar day, and the tide. LEDs underneath the glass produce an animation of light that flows slowly around the rings, showing the wax and wane and rise and set of the moon, and the ebb and flow of the tides. Using the latest design and technologies, Aluna will be powered directly by the Thames, using on-site tidal turbines. It will be the first major landmark of its kind, built by the community from locally recycled glass.
The music of the sun and stars.
Aluna will be a beautiful and monumental new feature for the London waterfront. It celebrates a tradition of maritime and astronomical achievements, and it reminds us also of our dependence on the tides and their near-eternal cycles, and of our powerful connections with nature and the cosmic environment.
Aluna is a remarkable project. It provokes conversations and raises questions about the nature of time and space, and more importantly, about us, how our actions, inventions, and hopes and fears sit in a long time, in a big space. We need to be reminded about our past and our future, and what a magnificent and gentle and beautiful reminder it is.
Aluna is a beacon for a peaceful and sustainable future, bringing all cultures, faiths, and ages together. The moon transcends all divisions, and when we watch the moon in London, half the world is watching it with us. Aluna will be a fully inclusive symbol for London as the most culturally diverse city on the planet. Aluna will be a major visitor attraction and educational resource for London that brings back a concept of real time into the city, reconnecting us with an understanding of the larger and slower natural rhythms of our blue planet. A unique waterfront space where people can take time out and enjoy a slower pace of time, all within within sight of the meridian. The waxing and waning, rising and setting, ebbing and flowing of time.
London's liquid artery, the beautiful, majestic Thames, is fresh but also salt water. The moon's gravitational pull causes the sea to come up the Thames estuary twice a day and moves London, rocks our city by 10 millimetres twice a day, every day. London's location, its history, its technological and maritime prowess, its global trading, its rich cultural tapestry, all rest on the foundations of the moon and tides. Because London is where it is because of the moon and tides. This was the furthest upriver that the tides reached in Roman times when London was founded. Peter Ackroyd writes in his London biography, "There is evidence of the sea in the fabric of this great city. Seaweed in the greyish marble of Waterloo Station, the force of hurricanes in the chattermark stone of pedestrian subways, and the bed of the upper Jurassic Sea in Waterloo Bridge. The tides and storms are still all around us, and therefore, Shelley wrote of London, that great sea still howls on for more." At Southwark, there once stood a Roman temple to the moon goddess Isis, and next to St. Paul's was a temple of Diana, the lunar goddess of the hunt. London's connections with Lady Luna go back even further. Our Celtic ancestors perhaps had an even better understanding of the relevance of this meeting point between the land and sea, much more than we do now. For legend has it that Luan Dun is Celtic for city of the moon, and Grian Witch is Celtic for city of the sun. So you heard Lord Martin Rees, the Astronomer Royal, in that short film. He's one of our patrons. And he talks about the tradition of maritime and astronomical achievements and our dependence on the tides and their near-eternal cycles and these connections with nature and the cosmic environment. And we want to create a reminder and a direct experience of that right in the middle of the city. This is in the same league as Stonehenge, the pyramids, the astronomical instruments at Jaipur, but right on a city stage, on the meridian. Aluna is a living lens on the fundamental connections between humanity and the natural world. It'll allow us to understand these slower natural rhythms that have shaped our past and certainly will continue to determine our future. So we're creating a space for contemplation, for celebration, education, performance, and festival. Aluna shares the global heritage of our river-based city and symbolizes our drive to create a greener, more sustainable future, a meeting point that transcends all divisions, a truly inclusive space for people and planet. So how does Aluna work? First of all, before I designed Aluna, I looked at the time cycles that I wanted to depict in this timepiece. The obvious one was the lunar phase cycle, which people are most familiar with. And then there are two other cycles, the Lunar Day Cycle, which is like the solar day, only 50 minutes more generous, and the tide cycle, which is half the length of the lunar day. And those of you who are familiar with the tides will know that 50 minutes a day, they're always later every day by 50 minutes, and that's because of the moon, because of the Lunar Day Cycle. So throughout the presentation, you'll see this animation going on in the, I hope my pointer works, no, it doesn't, in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And you can see that a full ring has just connected and is starting to undo itself. And it'll undo itself to nothing, and then it'll start coming on again. That's the lunar phase cycle, and it shows the wax and wane of the moon. The Lunar Day Cycle is the large hand of the clock, so the larger of those two little blocks. And it tracks the moon as it rises, and it comes over our heads, it sets, and then it goes below our feet and round the back of the planet. And the tide cycle, the smaller hand of the clock, is high tide, low tide, high tide, low tide. So this animation of time and light demystifies the rhythms and data of the moon and tides into a semiotic language that moves slowly and smoothly around Aluna's rings. We've already got it running in a sort of two-dimensional clock at Trinity Buoy Wharf on the other side of the river to where the big Aluna is going to be. And that's given us a lot of really good R&D information for the big project. And in the same way that the big project is gathering people to make it happen, and has done for all these years, and now we're on the last stretch, the little clock brought together so many people. The clock, I think we had grants for about £7,000, but the clock's worth about 85,000, and this was all by people putting in to build this clock on the corner of Trinity Buoy Wharf. So it was a very wonderful experience. Here you can see some stills over a lunar month of a lunar time, and gradually a ring growing, waxing on, and in the center of that picture it's full moon, and then it wanes back to nothing at the next new moon. So a lunar itself is a three-dimensional light object. It's a three-dimensional version of a lunar time. The largest ring, I'll just try this pointer again, because, no, sorry. Can I stand on this? Okay. Sorry. So the largest ring of the clock is the lunar phase ring. And there are two other rings. There are three concentric rings. The structure is recycled steel, and it's clad... thank you. Okay. It's clad in translucent recycled glass, which you can see a sample of here. So can everyone see that? And underneath that glass is a matrix of LEDs and fibre optics. And those are going to produce a lunar time as it waxes and wanes and rises and sets and ebbs and flows around a lunar. So here you see the largest ring, and it's 38 meters diameter. The light is off at new moon, and gradually it waxes on all the way around the ring, connecting at full moon, and then it wanes back to nothing at the next new moon. The Lunar Day Ring is half above ground, half below ground, and that's the big hand of the clock. So it starts in the east, it rises, that marker will be above our heads, it sets, and then it sets below ground when it's the other side of the planet. And then this is the smallest ring, is the tide ring, and the marker is high tide, low tide, high tide, low tide. During the day, it's just the leading edges of the rings in coloured light, and it's when the sun is setting that a lunar will really come to life, shimmering on the Thames. So the whole structure is specific to London's geographic location. If this was, and it's aligned with north-south, if this was further north in Scotland, for example, it would be much shallower because the moon and sun are much lower in the sky. If it was on the equator, it would be almost upright, one of the rings. And if it was in the southern hemisphere, it would be pointing north, and the animation would be going anti-clockwise. Here you can see two examples of a lunar time shown in a lunar. This is the waxing crescent, just starting to come on. The moon is setting, and it's low water. And this is full moon. It's the culmination. The moon is above our heads, and it's high water. So a lunar is actually powered by the thing it represents. It's powered by the moon. The moon creates the tides. And by having a slow turbine or an array of turbines in the Thames below a lunar, we'll be harnessing that energy and turning it into time and light for people to understand that direct connection. This is one of the test rotors that we've been offered by Ecofis, and that's being tested in Holland at the moment. And again, this is an example of how a technology provider has wanted to sponsor us in kind. This was almost £1 million worth of sponsorship offered. So when we start doing our development studies, we'll be able to see whether this turbine is right for this site or whether we need to look at other turbines. So a lunar on the Greenwich meridian. A few years ago, the leader of Greenwich Council invited us to bring our giant timepiece to the Greenwich waterfront. He thought it would be very suitable for the home of time. So he asked us to search for a suitable location, and it wasn't easy because Greenwich is on the south bank, and of course the moon is to the south, so finding a site where you'd be able to see the moon, for one, was already a difficulty. And also the other challenge has been that all land is up for grabs for money, for housing, posh flats on the waterfront, so we're always in competition with that. And it's been a long, meandering journey, but we've finally found what we believe is the ultimate site. There being no land available for a project that's about the people, we're going over the foreshore. So Aluna will have her feet standing in the intertidal waters where life began on Earth and looking up at the moon as it passes overhead. So Point Wharf is the name of the site, and the Mayor, Boris Johnson, Greenwich, the local MP, and our future neighbours are all around, all behind it, and we're now moving forwards to planning. This is an incredibly exciting site for Aluna. The green line coming down across the slide is the Greenwich Meridian, and you have to actually step across the meridian to get onto Aluna. There'll be a new cross-river clipper that's going to be hopefully hydrogen-powered. So we're providing a green landing pier for the public to come to the Greenwich Peninsula. Alongside us will be Europe's biggest ballroom that will be looking across its gardens to Aluna with the river behind and Canary Wharf behind there. And the O2 is to the east of that. And then if you follow the waterfront all the way down, you come to Greenwich Town Centre. So this really is a place where time and tide meets, right on the prime meridian at 0 degrees longitude, in the heart of London's Docklands. Here the ships used to look up towards the Greenwich Observatory to see the 1 o'clock time ball drop. They used to set their chronometers by this time ball and then set out to sea. The O2 Millennium Dome, built in honour of a moment in time, is a building whose size was intentionally 365 metres diameter, and it has 12 masts, one obviously representing each month of the year. And all the communities of East and South East London are connected to this place. This whole peninsula is being regenerated, and all the stories will be lost. But Aluna is going to still uphold those stories and celebrate them. From the families of the dockers, the Thames lightermen and watermen who used to work the river, to the immigrant cultures who have been vital in creating one of the world's most multicultural cities. Here you can see a photo composition from the north of the river looking straight down the meridian. The meridian's picked out at night, every night from Greenwich Observatory by this laser, and it comes overhead of Aluna. And this is just a simple schematic of Aluna over the foreshore with a platform. It'll have a big central space for performance and festival and raked seating in the landscape, a floating landing pontoon, tidal energy. And the great thing about this site is that you'll be able to see the bottom half of the Lunar Day Ring. And when the tide's out, you can actually walk on the beach underneath the Luna and see the southern hemisphere. So this will be a huge arrivals point for the Greenwich Peninsula, an amphitheatre, a catalyst for the Thames National Path regeneration. We'll be eco-engineering it so that we'll be attracting riparian life. So the intertidal zone of the Thames has lost almost all its surfaces. So young fish, juvenile fish, and other river creatures can't actually take a hold anywhere. So we'll be eco-engineering the structure Aluna sits on to have a large amount of ridges and surfaces for life to attach to. And of course it will be eco-powered as a landing pier. We're also developing a cultural and community and education program. We've already got a strategy for a national curriculum learning program, which will show children how everything's connected. It'll be cross-curriculum, and from myth and legend to maths to design and technology. And this site in terms of space, is quite compromised. So there's no room for an actual building, but that doesn't matter. We're right in the middle of the most amazing visitors centre that you could be in for this project. So this is one of the first schematics for Aluna at this location by Stuart Forbes Architects. It's going to look a bit different from this. We're sort of moved on from here, but basically a landing pier for boats, a long brow, and then you can walk up into Aluna and spend time inside Aluna. And the next couple of slides are images just created by Wagstaff's Design, who've offered us amazing pro bono support to do all our visualizing moving forwards now, with the Meridian laser coming overhead and Canary Wharf in the background. And here from the other side, you can see Aluna right there. These are buildings that are going to be here. So that's the only slight drawback, is that to the southeast there are going to be some buildings, but they've now got a lot of space in between them, so we'll be able to look through to the moon. And then that's to the south, down to the right. And you can see the cable car here behind the dome, and there's a skywalk going over the dome as well. So to deliver the project, we've set up a charity called the Aluna Foundation, and our patrons are Lord Martin Rees, Nicky Gavron, who's the former Deputy Mayor of London and is really responsible for keeping our project in London, Sir Terry Farrell, and Mike Davis, the architect of the dome. So he's been incredibly supportive, and he's also an amateur astronomer and sailor. And we have a board of trustees and a fantastic design and delivery team who are all leaders in their fields. These are just some of the projects that they've delivered. And when I took this project forwards, I knew I needed to get the right team who could deliver something that would be very long-lasting, very elegant, upgradable for future generations, and a stunning quality landmark. The projects attract a huge and very diverse range of endorsers, from Boris Johnson, the Royal Observatory Greenwich, Tim Smith, Brian Eno, Dame Jude Kelly, Jay Griffiths, the author of Sideways Look at Time and Wild, David Sobel, the author of Longitude, the late Sir Patrick Moore. And then looking at what I wanted to do was bring people from completely different parts of society together by this unifying symbol. And I think having Richard Dawkins in the same room as the Three Faiths Forum is quite a good achievement. So now I'm going to take you on a brief journey through time, tide, and space, and why I designed Aluna. Man, the energy addict, wanted to eat the universe, knowing there was more and hoping to outdo time. Why is time so important? It's one of the most talked about, stressed about, wondered about, juggled, commodified, and traded subjects. Time is one of the most spoken words of every day, and it rules our lives. When I started thinking about Aluna, I realized that it's actually the way we represent time that's incredibly important, for it says everything about the way we see ourselves and what our collective stands for. So humans experience the world and express themselves through time, and time, culture, and environment are therefore inextricably linked. But the only form of timekeeping that we put any value to is clock time. And through the standardization and our technological progress, clock time has become faster and faster and smaller fragments of time, and completely disconnected from our natural environment and humanity. Back in 200 BC, the Roman playwright Plautus said, "The gods confound the man who first found out how to distinguish hours, confound him too who in this place set up a sundial to cut and hack my days so wretchedly into small proportions." Fast forward to 500 AD, the Benedictine monasteries of the West decreed that through the quantitative measurement of nature's cycles, order could be imposed on men's lives, synchronizing prayer time for the pursuit of a purer soul. This imposition of order on life by marked, measured moments throughout the diurnal cycle, i.e. the solar day and night cycle, soon spread beyond the monastery walls and into the urban life, into town squares, marketplaces, and it brought a new kind of regularity to urban life. This order regulated the relationship between labour, production and money. It heightened the need for efficiency and provided the impetus for progress. Mechanical means of ordering time were invented, clocks whose regularity would not be affected by nature's elements. So time was now an embodied in a physical, mechanical object, an object of order and power and a form of social control. Man had become separated from nature. This scientific measurement of time has defined and propelled humanity's pursuit of capital, geographic power and domination over nature. For example, it was the invention of a seaworthy timepiece to establish longitude that was the crucial element to Britain's success with power and profit abroad. As the author Lewis Mumford said, the clock, not the steam engine, is the key machine of the modern industrial age. For every phase of its development, the clock is both the outstanding fact and the typical symbol of the machine. Even today, there is no other machine so ubiquitous. At each period, it has remained in the lead, and it marks a perfection towards which other machines aspire. So our representation of time, clock time, has gradually been ironed out and standardized into an unvaried, monotonous rhythm, enabling us to live in harmony with the automatum of our market-driven technology. This is the harmony of our market-driven technology. Here you can see a composite image showing how many fractions this digital clock at Greenwich Observatory shows in just 1 second, and this is what we've managed to do to time. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's had its side effects. In 1964, J.B. Priestley wrote in his book Man and Time, "We must attend to things through the narrowest now point that men have ever known. We are the people whose lives are rushing away in milliseconds." So these milliseconds move incredibly fast, as you can imagine. And this now point shown by our ever-accelerating clock has since become an arbitrary instant, disconnected from its parent universal timekeepers, the sun and moon, disconnected from the bigger picture. Has anyone noticed how, over the last decades of technological progress, time seems to be getting ever faster and faster? It rushes by so fast we can no longer keep up. We buy time-saving devices that clog up yet more of our time, and we try to save time to achieve more. Burnouts, chronic fatigue, and other temporal diseases are now common factors of life. Time famine, time squeeze, and time compression are common words in our vocabulary. We hear ourselves several times a day saying, I have no time, just like the white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. Overriding all this is the fact that we see time as a notion that solely exists outside ourselves, and that's where we've now gone wrong. We rarely encourage ourselves or each other to take our time, your time. On hearing those words, we look up incredulously yet gratefully, and we take our time. Hearing time spoken as ours is like flicking the valve on a pressure cooker, a reminder that time belongs to each and every one of us. And like the Irish saying goes, God made plenty of it. But we have become 24/7 and on-the-go creatures. And as producers and consumers, we are vital components in the success of our accelerating, growth-hungry economic order. So it's in turbo-capitalism's interest to promote fast living and convenience as a positive way of life in any way it can. This image shows some tasty morsels that can mean we don't have to stop for breakfast or lunch. We can just keep on the go. Food on the go, delivered in a convenient spoon-free pouch. It even says, without the spoon. Yogurt without the spoon. An all-in-one breakfast bar. Takeaway coffees that come with dribble-free lids so you don't spill whilst you're on the bus tweeting on your smartphone. Addictions to real coffee as opposed to instant coffee that help us keep up with the pace of our stressful days. The results of an economic system that prioritizes speed and money over true efficiency can be seen in the amount of unrecoverable waste our culture creates. Planned obsolescence ensures nothing is built to stand the test of time. We are the Kleenex culture that Schumacher identified in the 80s, I think, or even before that, and nothing has changed. In an age where science and technology is so advanced, we could probably make everything we produce last forever. Brian Eno of the Long Now Foundation says that we are the culture of clock times short now. I don't know if any of you are aware of the clock of the Long Now, which is actually a much bigger clock than a lunar, and in terms of time cycles, it bongs once a year and bings once a century, and it's going to be in a mountain in Nevada. So the Long Now Foundation, like Aluna, are part of this slow movement that's happening and hopefully gaining a bit of pace around the world. So Brian Eno says that living our lives solely by clock time has led to a disparate and unhappy society where profit and the propping up of an out-of-control economy take priority over human issues and urgent environmental concerns, and that our inability and even resistance towards thinking about the future is a symptom of our hectic, short-now lifestyles. The Future Trust used to have a great quote on their homepage: "The future is the now we created yesterday, are too busy to contemplate today, and are inadequately preparing for tomorrow." Our noses are pressed so close to the screen, to those tiny pixels and fragments of time, we actually can't see where we're going. We are simply on a rush to nowhere. And coupled with the effect that today's mobile technologies and social networking services have in terms of prioritizing the elsewhere to the here, I don't know if you experience bumping into people on pavements or seeing a friend and they're like, "Oh, I can't stop to talk, I'm just tweeting." This is a real problem. Social networking sites are fantastic, but there are side effects. Is it no wonder that there's a massive disconnect? And as Douglas Copeland puts it, the author, the mind is separated from the body. The mind itself is lost in time and space, and so the soul becomes this little twinkle of light hovering outside, managing the meat. We have to figure out a way in which to get that little twinkle of light back inside the meat, back inside of time, and back inside of space. Aluna aims to reconnect us with the larger natural time cycles, to reinstate an awareness of our celestial world, to put the time equals money concept back into its appropriate place, and encourage a conversation about temporality that moves away from saving and serving time. By thinking as big as the sky, we can take a step back from our short now dominated daily lives and reclaim time as natural, deep, slow, meaningful, big, multi-layered, cyclical, dark, light, male, female, raucous, wild, festival, celebration, personal, ritual, creative, beautiful, us. So why a giant lunar timepiece? Why the moon? This is one of the most important images ever taken. It inspired the start of the global environmental movement over 45 years ago. Astronaut William Anders recalls this moment of Earthrise. He took this image. "When I looked up and saw the Earth coming up on this very stark, beat-up lunar horizon, I was immediately overcome by the thought that here we came, all this way to the moon, and yet the most significant thing we are seeing is our own home planet, the Earth." Apollo astronaut Captain Edgar Mitchell recounts his experience, which also profoundly changed his life. "The biggest joy was on the way home. I suddenly realized that the molecules of my body, the molecules of the spacecraft, and the molecules in the bodies of my partners were prototyped and manufactured in the same ancient generation of stars, and that was an overwhelming sense of oneness and connectedness." 15 years ago, this image marked the start of my journey with Aluna. I was looking for a symbol and a catalyst that could help to unify us and reconnect us with an understanding of our place in the universe. There were lots and lots of wars being fueled again around the world at the time, with Tony Blair in Afghanistan and then later Iraq. And similarly, I was also remembering I'd learnt about our Kleenex throwaway culture. I wanted to create something that could help us re-engage with our planet and our environment, but also engage with each other and, like in London and this nation, live happily side by side. So when I saw this picture at the Hayward Gallery in 1999, the year of the eclipse, I realised that this perspective goes both ways. We don't need to go to the moon. We can see this bigger picture from Earth and learn all about the Earth just by looking at the moon, not just once in a solar eclipse, but something that regularly passes overhead, day in, day out, and on the monthly cycle. My late friend and mentor, Earl Daniel Davidson, he was a big inspiration for me for this project. He said, "Pay attention to the moon. It will teach you everything you need to know." I had no idea what he meant, and I'm only just really starting to understand. As the more I paid attention to the moon, the more I realized that it shows us how interconnected and interdependent our universe is. Our whole world is a living, breathing ecosystem that we are a part of. And that the moon, as it waxes and wanes and rises and sets and ebbs and flows, will take you on a lifelong journey of discovery. Just by looking up at the ever-changing shape of the moon in our sky, here you can see sun coming from the right-hand side of the picture, the new moon there to the left of the sun, and the Earth. And then the moon gradually moves around the Earth as the two orbs move around the sun. And as it moves round, the sun's light creates this changing crescent, first quarter, gibbous moon, full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter crescent, back to new moon. So just by looking at that shape in the sky, you can start learning about the phase, the position of the Earth and the moon and the sun in relation to each other, the tides, the seasons, the solstices, equinoxes, different species and their reproductive cycles, earthshine, which is when you look at the moon, the first crescent fingernail moon, and you see the light of the sun, which has bounced off the Earth onto the dark part of the moon. How the full moon and the sun mirror and balance each other, one being high in the sky in winter, the full moon is right overhead, and the other in summer, the sun being high in summer. And how the moon is literally our ballast and anchor in orbit. Without it, we would spin off. It's a companion planet without which life on Earth would be incredibly uncomfortable. There's also a lot of evidence about the moon's effect on the weather and atmospheric tides, as above, as so below, and as above, the tides and the atmospheric tides. And how each moon in every culture on this planet has a name that relates to the local landscape, the culture or agricultural activities. This moon is the hay moon, and thanks to the good weather we've just had, there's been a lot of haymaking going on. And also about earthquakes and moonquakes. The moon, with its different cycles, can help to trigger earthquakes, can help to move tectonic plates that are about to go. Scientists think that the Indian Ocean earthquake and the tsunami, the Turkish earthquake, which happened at the same time as our solar eclipse here in 1999, and possibly even the Japanese tsunami, were involved lunar cycles that were at their extremes, for example, solstices or perigees or apogees. And the CERN tunnel, I don't know if you know, but the CERN tunnel was built in a mountain range in the Swiss Alps so that it would not move, and yet scientists found an anomaly every month. They couldn't work out why, and they suddenly realized it was the full moon. So whenever there was a full moon and the Earth, moon, and sun were in alignment, and you got those spring tide poles, the mountains moved, and it was affecting the molten core of the Earth and moving the mountains. And then about the solar and lunar eclipses, where we experience the magical dance of our Earth-Moon-Sun system at this very special moment in universal big time, when their distances and sizes happen to make them seem to fit so perfectly over each other. So you can see here, the radius of the moon is around 1,000 miles, the Earth 4,000 miles, and the sun 432,000 miles. The sun is 400 times wider than the moon, but the distance, the sun is also 400 times further than the moon. So you get this wonderful dance of eclipses. And why we've been experiencing supermoons. This was the supermoon from behind the tour. So supermoons happen around the summer solstice, when the full moon in the summer is at its lowest in the sky, and it seems really big and fat. And it's even closer because it's at its closest part of the elliptical orbit, the perigee, and that's the supermoon. And you may also, just this week, which was really good timing for this talk, have heard or seen the news. Scientists have finally been able to prove that the anecdotes passed down by generations of, or over hundreds or even thousands of years, aren't just mumbo-jumbo. Admitting they were out to disprove that these were old wives' tales, because that's what science tends to try and do, they were going to disprove this once and for all by doing a scientific study of human sleep patterns and the moon's cycle. However, they were shocked to discover that their study actually proved that the full moon does have a significant detrimental effect on the quality and length of sleep, and also on hormone levels, in this case, melatonin. And this wasn't due to increased light. It's because somewhere inside of us, like other creatures on this planet, we have a circa-lunar clock running in synchronicity with the tides and working in conjunction with our circadian day and night clock, the sun time. So the moon and sun are working together in our bodies. And for science, finally, to start looking at this and to acknowledge this is a really massive step in the right direction. This could also account for the monthly jet lag that's been observed. Scientists think this might be when our bodies reset every month to compensate for the different timescales of the circa-lunar and circadian cycles, the lunar day diverging 50 minutes later every solar day. So every month we have a tired period where we reset ourselves and start again. So you can imagine I was well chuffed when the BBC Science correspondent Palab Ghosh contacted me this week to come on the PM show and talk a bit more about all those old wives' tales. So these are the fundamental rhythms of our Earth, our ocean planet. We're a blue planet. We've got an envelope of water around us. Scientists believe that life itself may not have ever got started without the moon's gravity and the ocean tides it causes. We're an ocean planet, and the relative position of the Earth, the moon and sun directly create these spring tide and neap tide cycles, and they happen not just in spring, every month, twice a month. So we've got the sun, the moon, which is new, and the Earth, and that's new moon. And when it's on the other side, it's full moon. That's when the sun, moon, and Earth are in alignment, and all the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun are working together to pull this envelope of water around the Earth into a very thick high tide and a very thin low tide. And then at the quarter moons, you get the neap tides. The moon's pulling the water, but the sun is pulling it in a different direction. So you get a less high tide and a higher low tide. Almost got that wrong. So with the rising tides of climate change, understanding these rhythms is more important than ever. Even the rate the ice caps are melting changes by up to 30% over the monthly cycle. Again, every full moon, the ice caps melt 30% faster. The new and full moon's tides are becoming increasingly hazardous to cities like London, especially when they coincide with other cycles such as seasonal equinoxes or the major lunar standstill with even more tidal ranges and likely tidal surges. These are cycles, like I said earlier, that have shaped our past and will continue to determine our future, and we really need to understand them, for time and tide waits for no man. We can also learn how all these cycles have influenced the evolution of humanity in its rich cultural diversity. The moon is a common symbol that transcends all divisions. And this same waxing crescent moon that you can see is how you see it from different parts of the globe. So different perspectives on the same light. There's a Sufi saying that actually says the moon diffuses the light enough for us to stare at the truth without hurting our eyes. So this is in the northern hemisphere, the equator, and the southern hemisphere. It has been important to cultures and religions around the world since the dawn of time, and many of London and the world's major festivals are celebrated in time with new or full moons, including Easter, Passover, the Jewish, Islamic, Hindu, and Chinese New Years, Ramadan and Eid, the Holi festival in India, Diwali, Wesak, Purnima, Imbolc, the Obon Festival of Souls, Loy Krathong, the Thai Festival of Lights, that's at a full moon, Otsukimi, which is every month the Japanese gathering in parks and on balconies to watch the beauty of the full moon, and Chinese and Vietnamese autumn moon and Tet festivals, which celebrate unity, harmony, children, and thanksgiving under the harvest full moon. So Aluna, like the moon, is a symbol for unity and also our diversity. Like the moon, it's inclusive of all these cultural expressions of time and aims to help dissolve boundaries and encourage intercultural understanding and dialogue. At Aluna, we'll be celebrating this shared global heritage through festival and performance, informal and formal education, including national curriculum materials. And we'll be creating the Aluna Archive, a repository of our individual and shared lunar heritage, as well as the incredible scientific and industrial developments that have been made possible through man's understanding of and interaction with the moon and tides. This is an image of moonlight on the Thames. When I took this photo of the moon reflecting on the Thames, the moon's light, which is actually the sun's light, bounced off the moon onto the Earth's watery surface, through my eyes, through my lens and my camera's lens. This light carried with it not only this connection between our star, our sister planet, and us, but also thousands of years of global cultural memory and meaning. The Thames watermen and many others across the globe see water as the universal carrier. The moon and our oceans, after all, connects us all. And without water, there would be no life. Throughout history, the seas and rivers are a metaphor for time and life. And the more time you spend around water, the fainter your memories of quantified time become. We relax. Is it no wonder that the favorite recreation and relaxation places for us watery beings is alongside, in, or on water? Is it just coincidence that our bodies have the same 70% water content as the Earth's surface, and our brains even more? And hopefully science will soon be able to find further proof of this connection between our circulunar clocks, our physiology, our emotions, and the tides of our blue planet. And this will put a whole new perspective on the saying, time is of the essence, for the essence is water. The word Aluna comes from the Kogi people in Colombia, and I imagine quite a few of you will have heard of the Kogi people. They're working hard to try and get us, their younger brother, to engage with the planet, with nature, to slow down and pay attention and live in more sustainable ways. And they've made a film that will hopefully be coming out soon called Aluna. For Aluna is their word for the mind inside nature. It's the cosmic ocean, the primordial soup from which all things are born and in which everything is contained. Like the Kogi's Aluna, the moon clock is a timepiece that forms the bridge between the universe and the human spirit. where the big, beautiful present includes the memory of the past and the potential for the future. Before I finish, I'd like to read one last quotation from J. Griffith. She's a wonderful muse on time and has written a book called Pip Pip, A Sideways Look at Time, which I really recommend reading. Aluna is both art and a way of thinking, revealing the beauty of an undersung world, the moon in an over-solar society, the tides in a dry urban setting, and the subtle grace of nature's times in a world too dominated by clocks. Thank you very much for your time. And next time you look at the moon, please remember that half the world is watching it with you at that very moment. And also that Albion, this beautiful land of ours, is the land of Albina, who was the milk-white moon goddess. That was something to do, apparently, with our white cliffs, and this was the land of the milk-white moon goddess. So as I mentioned earlier, we're taking the project now through its final development stages, and we're going to be submitting a full planning application in spring next year. We are looking for supporters to join us and help facilitate the project, big or small, and also to help facilitate the capital build. So if you'd like to help us on this journey to rebalance Greenwich, City of the Sun, with a little lunar energy right on the meridian, do please get in touch. My contacts are here, and I've got some postcards here as well. Or log on to alunatime.org. Join the mailing list, help spread the word via all your social networking sites, and consider becoming a friend of Aluna. And in terms of getting the message out, now we're having a big push, and we'd really like to create a big energy around the clock for its delivery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura Williams. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
you. You can leave it there. Brilliant.
Yeah? Do you want questions or not? Is it time? I don't mind either.
Do you want to take any? We've got time for one question, if anybody has a question. Lady here.
Do you have a time for completion?
Oh, I forgot to mention that. Sorry. Yes, spring 2016. Yes, thanks. Okay.
All right, well, thank you. Big hand for Laura Williams, please.
Thank you.